Welcome to the Recruiter Startup Podcast. My name's Dilta Doherty, and in this podcast series, I will be interviewing investors, advisors, founders, entrepreneurs, and recruiters who are based all over the world. We're going to be discussing how to set up, scale, and operate a world-class recruitment business. Today is slightly different. I'm going to be speaking to somebody who's a little bit more junior. Her name is Ksenia Chichenko. She's based in Sydney. She's working with a boutique IT recruitment firm called Precision Sourcing. I brought her on because she's hit my newsfeed a few times with her excellent little videos. And I thought, you're going to be an interesting one to interview. And she was. So she is from Russia, went to university in Australia, so left home at 17. And we discussed what that was like for her and how she ended up working for Robert Walters, what she learned there, maybe some of the little frustrations she had there by the end of it, and why she prefers working for a boutique. I've worked for Walters as well, so we discussed it. I probably had maybe a better experience than she did. She had a good experience. I had an amazing experience, mainly down to the manager I had in Western Australia, Jodie Gillespie, who might just be the best recruiter in the world, definitely the hardest working. But yeah, so we discussed her life and her life in recruitment, and what's working for her and what it's like to work for a boutique in the Sydney market right now. All right, over to Ksenia. Hope you all enjoy, and if you are, reach out to me. Come on the show, tell your story. Love to hear from you. And thank you so much for all the 5-star reviews that we're getting. And if you are enjoying the podcast, please send it to another recruiter. Thanks. Over to Ksenia. Ksenia.
Okay, so I think it's working.
Fantastic. We got there in the end.
Okay, brilliant. Apparently, Androids just don't like text from overseas or something, but fortunately enough, I took my work phone with me.
Lovely. Well, welcome to the Recruiter Startup Podcast. I was devastated to hear you've never heard an episode.
Well, what can I say? I've been insanely busy for the past 2 weeks, but it all paid off today. Actually, today I passed my probation, which is really exciting for me.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we'll definitely jump into all of that later. How's your day going? So you had a good day. How are you going to celebrate passing your probation?
Well, I got a bottle of champagne, which I'm planning to open right after this podcast is going to be finished. I'm also babysitting my boss's dogs this weekend, which is really exciting.
You can open that champagne right now if you want.
I put it in the fridge to chill. I think champagne is always better to be served when it's cold.
All right, cool. Well, good to have you on here. I suppose I've invited you on here because you have hit my newsfeed quite a bit with your videos, and some of them get a great reaction, some of them get a different type of reaction, and I want to jump into all of that because being an IT recruiter, it's tough work, and I want to discuss that with you, and it's also great work, but how did you manage to get into recruitment? And you're based in Sydney, is that right? And you're not originally from Australia?
No, I'm not. I'm actually from the city called Vladivostok on the far east of Russia. I came to Australia when I was 17, and I've always been based in Sydney, but I've never been there until I actually came here to study. So it was quite a big move for me and my entire family.
How did it come about?
Well, I always wanted to study overseas, and when I was in my final year of high school, I had the privilege of being the only child. So basically, I just told my parents that I want to study abroad. And I want to improve my English skills because I've been traveling quite a bit. When I was a teen, I was lucky enough to study in Ireland a bit. Then I went to Singapore as well. So we started thinking, where could I go? And Australia just came up. I've never been to Australia. I came here and I didn't even have the adapter for my phone, so I couldn't charge it for the first day. But it seemed like a nice opportunity, so I just packed my bags and went here.
At 18, by yourself?
17.
17.
Well, yes, I came with my dad. He stayed here for 3 days, bought me a printer so I could print out my college work, and left back to Russia. Haven't been to Australia ever since.
Oh
And
my,
it's been 6 years.
oh my God. Um, that that's incredibly brave of you. What was that like adapting at the start? Was it difficult?
Well, it was relatively easy for me because I've been traveling quite a bit before I actually came to Australia. So I was quite used to different environments, settling in. I was living by myself pretty much since I was 16 as well. My parents didn't really care, to be honest, at that point. So they knew that I'm going to be fine. So the biggest challenge for me was that I had to do everything on my own. I have a really big family in Russia. So my grandma on my dad's side, for example, she has 5 sisters, and I was the only child of the family for quite a long while. So I was used to the constant support of the family. And whenever I was feeling down, whenever I was encountering any problems, I knew that I have a bunch of people who are ready to help me. Whereas in Australia, it was I could always call them and I could ask them to just give me a bit of support. But if I had any problems, I had to deal with them on my own. So that was probably the biggest challenge for me.
Um, people say that only children they get a little bit spoiled, but it sounds like you you're quite an independent person. Did you find that there was a lot of pressure on you to become successful or and move away and do these things because you were an only child?
Well, I never felt the pressure. I only felt support, but that actually didn't help me at the very end. So that's actually goes quite nicely into why and how I fell into recruitment. So as I said, I was the lucky only child. Never worked a single day of my life. I can't lie. I was working as a barista, I think, in year 10 for 2 months, but that was about as much work as I was doing because when I was studying, my parents were helping me out and I didn't actually have to work because in Russia, the culture is that your parents have to support you until you have your degree and then you're sort of on your own, but they still support you throughout your first 2 years when you start the job. So it's quite a different one to Australia, I'd assume. But basically, my plan was to finish studies and start doing my master's degree. I wanted to do the MBA straight after I finished with my business degree here.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a bit of an unfortunate event happening in my family because my dad fell from a tree and broke his spine.
Oh
Um,
God.
I only discovered it when I was in Australia. So my cousin called me and asked me if I'm sitting down. I wasn't. So it was a bit of a shock because she called me straight from the hospital saying that he's in surgery and they didn't know if he'd make it out alive. He did, luckily. We're laughing about the story now, but it was not funny back then because I was in Australia on my full, like on a full support from the family, didn't have a job, was just about to graduate, and my family just had a massive crisis.
Oh God.
So I couldn't even fly home because basically we didn't have any money to fly me home. And it was this really scary situation of not knowing what's going to happen next. So it's been a couple of stressful months. I was in my final semester at uni, and luckily my dad recovered really quickly, but he couldn't work. He couldn't work for quite a long time, so he was not able to help me out, and I couldn't do my masters anymore. So
Mm.
because I was on a student visa, I couldn't really have any other option just to find a job, and nobody really wanted an overseas student with no working rights for graduate jobs. I applied to about 50 jobs, which said Australians only, just in the hope that somebody might consider me. And I got no responses whatsoever. And that's how I applied to Robert Walters. It
So,
was the only recruitment job I applied for.
so we have a lot in common. I'm an only child as well. I studied business in university as well, and I started my career in IT at Robert Walters too. Uh, how, what was that like going into that environment straight out of uni? I can imagine that must have been difficult. I was 27, so I was really streetwise, and like I had a good well, I had a background anyway. Oh, and I felt I could kind of navigate those waters, but I've seen so many graduates come in, and it's a tough environment.
What was it like for you starting out? Did you start off straight as a 360 consultant?
Yes, so I was 20, so
Wow.
definitely no experience whatsoever. As I said, not haven't worked for a single day in my life. I started 2 weeks after I graduated as well, and I started in the Java recruitment team in Walter's CBD office. So it was not 360 recruitment straight away because I still have gone through a lot of training at the start, but I started as a consultant. So I did not work as a resourcer. I think it was a bit of a different model towards the model that they had before or that they have now. I'm not sure. But yeah, I basically was put into the Java recruitment team. I thought that Java is a coffee blend at that point and was terrified of doing IT. And yeah, I just had to crack on.
Yeah, and you obviously survived, which is really impressive. Do you remember sitting in that room and wondering, I wonder how many of these people will survive? Did you see a lot of people not maybe make it through the first 3 to 6 months? And because when I was there, that was the kind of thought process I used to have after I was in my first year. I could really see those type of things.
Yeah, I think there were about five of us that started at roughly the same time. A few people started a bit before me, a few people started a bit after. And I remember when we were undergoing training, my boss at that time actually told us that, okay, so look at the people you're sitting in this room with right now. Half of you are not going to be here in the next 6 months. Some of you are just going to think that the job is too tough. Some of you are just going to think that you want to do something else. But some of you will stay and some of you will do really well. So I just remember that my only thought at that point was because I just got my visa approved, so they sponsored me, and my only thought was, okay, I need to be in this 50% of people who make it because I can't afford to fail in this job.
I felt similar, different but similar. I was looking for a visa as well, and my wife, girlfriend at the time, her visa was dependent on mine because I was the one who went to uni, and I felt incredible pressure. And because I was that little bit older, and I don't know, I'd ran nightclubs in the past, and I hadn't. I think they were kind of taking a shot at me. Um, I, I was under a lot of pressure, and I just remember thinking, what I'm just going to make this work. I'll do whatever it takes because it's not an easy environment to survive. How long did it take you to find your feet? And because you were so young, not from Australia, and coming in as a graduate, was it an easy transition, or when did the pressure start coming on you?
Well, I wouldn't lie, I was lucky enough because I was hired by a really good boss of mine. So I had about three bosses change during my time at Robert Walters. But the person who hired me, he was great and he gave me incredible training. I think he went and started his own thing afterwards, but basically, I was not feeling pressured when I started. I was not really heavily KPI when I started. I was basically told that as long as you can deliver results, we don't really care what you do on the background as long as it gives us the money and it gives you the money and it gives you the commission check. So I went through the training. I think I spent about 6 months watching videos Java for Dummies and trying to understand what market for. But I was quite lucky in terms of the billings and starting to do business development because I definitely was really lucky because I started billing fairly quickly for a rookie.
Fantastic. And what was the Walters has a different type of environment. It's quite team environment uh, based. How did how did is that something that you've kind of taken with you? Is there any real lessons that you learned from your time there?
Well, I just learned that I think a team is important because if everybody is working for themselves, they can't really achieve really good results. I was in a like it was a very team based environment, so your commissions and your results were heavily dependent on other people's as well. Because if you did well but your entire team didn't, it would impact the amount of money that we would get in the end, I think. So, and it would impact the overall team morale because obviously it was heavily incentivized. So there were a lot of team competitions going on. So I knew that if you want to succeed in this kind of environment, you can't just think of yourself. You have to think of the team, and you have to think of your colleagues, and you also have to ask for help if you don't know something, because if you will just try to crack on and it wouldn't work out, it's a very high turnover industry. So you're quite replaceable and you can't afford to fail. So you need to ask for help when you need.
And you were there for 2 years and 3 months. What led you to changing jobs? How did that culminate?
Well, there were multiple reasons for it. So, as I said, I started billing pretty quickly. So I had an amazing first year. I felt that I know it all. I felt that it's
Oh,
very easy to do recruitment, and I think that's the trap that a lot of people fall into. But I think I just got quite lucky in my year one. And as I mentioned, I had a lot of bosses changing
yeah.
while I was there. So I had about 3 managers, 2 associate directors change within this period. And because of that, the environment was changing every time. So I think the point when I realized that I need to leave was when the culture has changed to the point that I didn't feel like I can be successful in that culture, and that
what type of things were changing?
Well, as I said, I think I worked for the best boss ever in my first year. So it was all results orientated and results based. And I was really struggling with business development at first, but because he was teaching me how to do targeted calls and how to target the right people, I got really good results from it. Whereas when the culture changed, it became really KPI focused, and I was stressing out a lot about my visa. I had a lot of personal stuff going on in the background as well. So I just realized that I just can't manage this high level of activity. And I just realized that I am failing. And it was about the end of my year 2 when I realized that I'm doing less activity and I'm getting less results, and I'm not motivated to do more because I don't feel like I want to be in that company.
Yeah, it's an interesting environment. I have a lot of time for it because it was so good to me, and you know if you do well, you're like a celebrity. They bring you in on a magic carpet. It's a great feeling because it's so team environment. Because of the team environment, if you're doing well and you're at the top of the room, you feel invincible. Now, on the reverse of that, because it's a team environment and a lot of their bonuses are based around that, if you're underperforming in a team or not hitting your full potential in it, you really feel like that, and it can be quite pressurized. Is that something you felt?
You feel like a failure, especially when you see people who started later than you doing much better than you did in your first year, or even doing much better than you're doing now. So I would agree with you 100%.
Yeah, I remember it, but I was quite lucky. You know, I worked for an amazing manager, and she worked the shit out of me, but I made a load of money, and it was all just down to her network, her processes, and I had the one boss the whole time I was there. So I suppose I was quite lucky in my experience, but I saw other teams within it where they didn't have the same solid leadership, and I remember thinking, oh man, that's tough for those people who are coming and going. So you got to a point where you were looking for something different. What was your process to look for another job in the marketplace? Did you interview in a lot of places? Did you have a list of things that you were thinking of? I mean, I'm really interested to get into this because most people we interview here are business owners, and the conversation is probably a bit more high level. I'd love to get into the actual detail of what is in the mind of somebody who needs to make it and is 2 years into their career.
Well, obviously, I'm a recruiter, so I thought it would be stupid of me not to go to a rec to rec. So one of my friends has actually recently left at that point, and she was interviewing with different rec-to-recs, with different companies directly, and there was only one person that stood out in the entire process. She ended up placing her, so she basically just referred me to her. And I was very, because as I said, recruitment was my first job, I didn't know how it would work outside of it. Also, I only interviewed at Robert Walters when I was looking for my first job. I haven't interviewed anywhere else. It was my first ever interview in a lifetime. So I didn't know what to do. So when the Rec-to-Recs contacted me, I felt really scared, and I never replied to them, never took their calls, just shut them down. But for this lady, I just decided, well, why not? I better have a chat with her just to know what's happening. And it was that point when the visa things in Australia changed as well. So I didn't even know if I could leave because obviously I was on the sponsored visa and I was stressing out. And she started a few processes for me. And then, as I said, I didn't know what I wanted. I just knew that I don't want to work for a big corporate. I was like, I'm just 23. I didn't feel like I can make it in a big corporate because I thought that I'm too young for it. So basically, I just told her, if there are any boutiques that would be interested in having a chat with me, just let me know. And that's how we started the process.
And she thought, ding, 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 2 years Walters, degree qualified. I'm going to make some money out of this car.
Well, the biggest thing for me was that I didn't go on a lot of interviews. I actually initially just interviewed with two companies. I wouldn't say the names, but one of them actually felt like Robert Walters, just on a smaller scale. So I thought it's not the right fit for me. Another one was amazing, very digital, very small, like much smaller. We had 70 people, I think, in the city office. And I actually, because as I said, Walters was the only company I interviewed first, and I didn't really want to interview in a lot of places, even if I left somewhere. So I thought I would just stick with it. But she just kept telling me about those other opportunities, and I was sticking to my word, and I was saying, no, I will finish the process with this company, and if they say no, we will start again. But she just pushed me into exploring more roles, and that's how I ended up at Precision, because if it was not for her, I wouldn't even consider interviewing for them.
And I can tell by your posts on LinkedIn that you really like your job, and that it's very hard to fake authenticity in a video. And I can see that, you're really you're into it, and you've come from a place where you weren't into it because at the end, because it wasn't going the way that it was at the start. And that's the highs and lows of being a recruiter. What was the key differences when you joined a boutique from being at a major like Walters, given that you've been trained at this stage, you have a set way of working throughout the day, you're used to being managed quite tightly. How what were the key differences from when you're in there on a daily, hourly, weekly basis?
Well, first of all, a much smaller office and a smaller view from the window. That was the biggest thing for me. With the big corporates, they really want you to, they want to impress, I think, all the clients and the candidates that are coming in. So the offices were amazing. Whereas when you're in a boutique, they probably they invest heavier in people rather than in the surroundings at the start. So I joined literally at the moment when they were doing the office refurb as well. So I started in the older office, and it stressed me out a little bit because it was not shiny and it was not polished. And now we're working in the amazing place. And obviously I joined, and there were 10 people when I came in, and everybody came up to me, congratulated me on the role. It was very small, and I just realized that I could remember everybody's name from the start. Whereas when I started at Robert Walters, it took me a little while to remember everyone because it was so huge. So that was the first one. And then obviously just the entire culture and the entire way of working is different. It was actually harder for me to start there because I had experience and I was taught to work in a certain way. I didn't trust my manager and my director for the first couple of months because I thought that I know how it's done. It worked for me before, so I'm just going to replicate it in a smaller team. It's even easier.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think I think when you're at a Robert Walters, a Michael Page, a Hayes, or an S3, you're almost brainwashed into a certain way of thinking. Like, this works, we're world class, we do it our way, and our way is the only way, and it's the best way. And it can take a while to kind of go, oh wait, actually, that's not holistically true. What were the key little things that you would say were different?
Well, first of all, we have a very good mentoring program. So it doesn't matter if you're a senior, if you're a rookie when you start at Precision, you still have a certain structure of the day and of the week and of the month that you have to follow. It's not micromanagement, but it helps you to set up your day. So we started doing weekly reviews, and they were not just the thoughtless list of your KPIs and what you've done for the week. They were more revolving around your goals and what you want to achieve and what are your means of achieving it and what were your outcomes for the week. So that was quite different to me because nobody was monitoring my call times. Nobody was counting how many calls a day I did. All that was important is what I got from the calls that I've made and what I'm planning to do with this and how it's going to make me successful. So that was a big thing. And I didn't see value in it for a little while, to be honest. And my reviews were terrible. I don't really know how my boss was actually coping with it because I just didn't fill in the forms properly. I didn't really pay attention. And now I do. And I see that the results are paying off.
Yeah. So when you say it's outcome based, what type of things were they monitoring, if not call time, and how did they go about doing that from a mentoring perspective?
Well, in recruitment, everything is based on relationships. So the outcomes that are going to help you build the relationship are the outcomes that you want to get. So when I started, my biggest thing was to obviously establish the market and get connected to new people. So the outcomes were meetings with key people. There were jobs that I got from those people, interviews that I got later down the track when I actually started picking up jobs. Social media was a big thing as well. I was targeted on my content, and I basically had to learn what works for my market and what things I have to put out. And Simon, my boss, really wanted to get me on camera really quickly. So he wanted me to do a video, I think once a month when I started, and I didn't really want to do it. And now I'm doing a video every week, sometimes even more than that. So it's funny because I was really against that. I didn't really want to go on the social media. That was the thing that was stressing me out the most.
That's really good. I was wondering if it was driven by you or him, and that's because I remember I first saw you on a video, and I think you were swimming in or something. You were out swimming on a work day or something, and then all these IT people started giving like some negative things like, oh, recruiters this, recruiters that, and I was like, oh, I hope she keeps continuing to put out content and doesn't get put off by this. There's a delicate balance, isn't there, to putting out something and dealing with the feedback that you get from it.
I'm a very sensitive person, and I wouldn't lie. Sometimes I read the main comment and I don't cry, but it makes me upset. It can make me really, really upset. But at the end of the day, that post got 600 likes and about 35,000 views.
Yeah, it was a great post.
Yeah, I found a candidate. I placed him in the end for the position that I was advertising there.
So the ROI on that one post was worth 10 to 15,000 Australian dollars to your boss. So him putting in that process is paying off, which I think a lot of people could take a lot of stock from that. Why don't you post every day? Why don't you do a video every day? What's stopping you?
I actually am posting every day. I put one LinkedIn post a day, but I don't do videos every day because, to put it simply, I still have my day job, and my day job is to be a recruitment consultant. As much as I like doing the fun stuff, first of all, I still need to recruit, and I can't just sit there and making videos all day. And second of all, content still needs to be authentic. As much as I want to talk about something on camera every day, it will bore my audience to death people don't just want to hear people speaking about the jobs every day and saying, hey, I have this amazing .NET development opportunity and I have this role and I have that role, because everybody is doing that and everybody knows that you have jobs. If you
Yeah, I
want to
know.
discuss, you need to have something to talk about apart from just the generic recruitment things.
And yeah, and it's taken me a while to figure out how to do that with my own business, but you can do that. And I think it's about documenting, not creating. And there's a guy called Gary Vee who goes into a lot of detail on that. And I mean, there's nothing to stop you going out and recording with one digital client a day on what it's like to work there, and showing that to your audience and keeping building on this. I think you should really double down on what you're doing, because if it's hit my screen and I don't know you, then you're doing something right. So that's my 10 cents worth on digital marketing anyway.
Well, thanks. I'm going to make my boss listen to this and tell him that I need to be louder on the social media, because obviously.
Yeah, no, it definitely works. But like, there's nothing to stop you going out there, speaking to 100 digital recruitment companies, helping them with their employer branding and retaining their services based on what you're able to do in terms of demonstrating who they are and what they're about. And I think that could be the next level of your business. But what other things outside of social media are working for you now?
Well, events is the big thing that Precision Sourcing is doing. I don't know of a single recruitment company in Sydney that is so heavily invested in the events in the industry. So we have an event for every market we recruit for. So when I joined, I was working with another development recruiter. His name is Cam. And in my first week, we're sitting in the room and Simon told us, okay, Ksenia, by the way, we have this event in the development space and it's called Co-Chiefs. And you will have to introduce the speakers on it. By the way, it's in a few weeks. So you and Cam better start preparing. And I was terrified. My hands were shaking. And I didn't know that I could go in front of an audience of 50 people who are very senior, who are much older than me, who have much more experience than me, and actually say something valuable to them. But as I said, I've recently hosted one on my own when I was preparing the event from start to finish, and I think I nailed it. So
why haven't I seen a video of it?
I think that's because I just forgot to coordinate with our marketing coordinator and send it out, because we did video it. And this is one of my biggest problems, which I am fighting with right now, is the time management and how I stay on top of all the tasks.
Yeah, it's tough, right? And I was trying to work out how you would do that. I was thinking about this before our call, how you run a traditional desk whilst, being like documenting stuff along the day. And it's a tough balance. I mean, I think I'm probably able to do it because I work for myself and we've been doing this for quite a long time. But if I was to put myself back to what it was like being an IT recruiter and the intensity of doing that, it's a different challenge. Talk to me about the market for IT in Sydney. Is it a great place to be a recruiter right now? Is it busy?
Oh, absolutely. I think development is the best part of IT as well. Maybe I'm biased because obviously I didn't have a choice when it started and they just put me into the development desk. But if you look at every company, even if it's not within the IT, they will have a developer. Every company has a website. Every company has, not every company, but a lot of companies have a mobile app. They have something that has to be developed. So it means that they always have work for dev recruiters. And the market is really busy and competitive as well. I think I complained to my boss once saying, okay, you work in analytics and you're so good at it. And that's because you don't have any competition because you know your market so well. Whereas I compete to 100 of other really good dev recruiters that understand the market. But it's so busy that there is work for everyone. It's not like you have to be fighting with other companies for business because there is enough business for everyone.
Fantastic. Well, look, thanks so much for your time. It's been really fascinating getting to getting to talk about what it's like to be an IT recruiter. I do miss it, to be honest. Um, any last words in terms of the type of people who should be reaching out to your boss?
Well, if you like working with a crazy Russian and a crazy German, and if you like to work for one of the best bosses in the industry, actually two, actually three, I forgot, Jill, the founder of our company, bosses in the industry, that will actually take personal responsibility for your success and will tell you everything that you can implement to make yourself successful, even if you decide to go outside of recruitment down the track, you should definitely be reaching out to us, to me, to Simon, my boss, or to Joel, my other boss, and come work at Precision Sourcing. We're growing our dev team, actually, so I'm looking for a buddy.
Okay, Xenia, thanks so much. Take care. God bless.
Thank you, Walter. It was nice speaking to you.
Well, what a cool story that was. I liked how she had the balls to move country, to go to university and really carve out a life for herself as a recruiter. You know, it's tough to make it as a recruiter, and even surviving for a couple of years at a big firm can be a big achievement. And it sounds like it's really worked out for her in Precision Sourcing. I think it's interesting how she went in and thought she knew it all, and then kind of was like, oh, actually, maybe I don't. And she started doing well once she really bought into the culture of the person she was working for. I think there's something in that there is no 100% right way of doing something or of making it work. It's kind of like figuring out what works within the place and framework that you're working in, and really adapting to that. Really enjoyed speaking to Xenia, and I think she could double down on her digital strategy, and I hope she does. You know, it's really great to see recruiters taking a different approach to things, you know, trying to mirror their market. And I think she's well underway from doing that. Guys, if you're enjoying the podcast, please give it 5 stars on iTunes, and please send it to another recruiter. And we'll have somebody else on tomorrow. All right. Take care. God bless. Go out and get some.
The podcast you just heard was published with Anchor. Got something you want to say to the creator of this show? Send them a voice message using the Anchor app, free for iOS and Android.